welcome back to Soul Sessions with me, Emma. It's so lovely to have you with me today. Just a reminder that this is a space for honest conversations about life, growth, connection, and what it means to be human. Today's guest is Siobhán Connolly Hogan, a positive psychology practitioner, well-being consultant, researcher, and speaker whose mission is to help people live happier, more fulfilling lives. In today's conversation, we'll be exploring topics such as self-doubt, the inner critic, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and how we can begin rewriting the stories we tell ourselves in order to become the best version of who we are. I really got a lot out of this conversation, and I'm sure you will too. Enjoy. Welcome, Siobhán. It's so lovely to have you here with me today.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Great.
We've been long threatening to get it together, so
I know. It's amazing. I think we might be distant cousins. I'm not sure. We had a chat about that a while ago, didn't we? Who knows? It's Ireland after all. I'd love to get to know more about you before we dive into your work.
Sure.
If you wouldn't mind just telling me a little bit about your background and how you ended up and the pathway to positive psychology.
Okay, so I'm from Newbridge, did degree in Maynooth and started teaching in Roscrea over 30 years ago. 33, I think somebody tells me. So yeah. And came down the country, down to Tipperary, and taught Irish and religion and SPHE, and got very interested in the whole area of wellbeing from the very early days before I ever went on the curriculum. I think the very first time I went, it was for an LCA weekend for teaching wellbeing in an LCA. That's how it very originated on the curriculum in schools. And from day one, I was hooked. I loved it, and I wanted to know more and more about basically just how to help myself and how to help other people. And now I know it's flourishing, but at the time I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
I think it was just to try to stop struggling, which I still do. And doggy paddling and keeping the chin above water. And that's okay. So just got to know more and more about it, got to know, then discovered kind of, I think growth mindset was my first area of positive psychology that I might have learnt about, and just couldn't get enough of it. Started doing any course I could do, kind of small courses, did a day with Jolantha Burke, who's Dr. Jolantha Burke, who's in RCSI, and just really, got totally hooked on it. And then took the very naive, brave move of going back to do a master's in it. So I took a career break and went over and back to England one weekend a month to do a master's in applied positive psychology, which is very important because it was everything we learned was you had to do it yourself. So all the assessments were based on how you got on with the positive psychology interventions that you chose to do. So it was completely transformative. I think it happened at the right time in my life for me. I was, and so many of us were at that age. It's kind of that cusp of turning 50. It was funny when we first went around and asked each other what age we were. So many of us were at that 48. Which I since learned is that, that real time that you can make midlife catalyst, which I wrote a course on afterwards. I think the joke is I have a course on that. I have a course on everything. Yeah. And then, so really changed during that period. And then just felt a huge onus to spread everything I learned with everybody and anybody and as diverse a people as possible. So that's how Suna was born, my company. So it's Suna Real Life Positivity, and I'm all about real life. And so I post every day. I've written courses. I do workshop. Anybody invites me anywhere to do anything, I'll go, And that was hugely breaking through, being very, very scared to present, even in my small group in college. And there was only 25, at the first time, at the start, there was only 25, which whittled down. I couldn't get up the confidence to present the posters or to present in front of them, which was only 10, 15 minutes. And now I just can't believe that I couldn't get the courage to do that. But I think the mission was bigger than the fear or the inner critic. And I'd done
Yeah.
a lot of work, I suppose, on the inner critic through my dissertation.
Yeah.
So I,
Wow.
started delivering courses, presenting, doing
Yeah.
keynote.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Wow, there's
post
so
every
many.
single day on social
Yeah.
media. Yeah.
Yeah. So brave, Siobhán. It's so amazing, isn't it? Because we are our own students, really, aren't we? And I think if we've walked the walk, then we can talk the talk. That's what I've seen anyway. I'm not sure about you, and we will talk about this in a bit about the inner critic. But one of the challenges I've had, because I'm going through that messy middle in my life right now where I'm trying to move from. So I think what you spoke about there, Siobhán, is you took that brave step of doing the masters. And just to remind people, because I know myself from my own experience, psychology wasn't always seen as this amazing degree to do even 15 years ago. I mean, I did a degree in humanities, which was philosophy, psychology, English, and so on. And people, let's be honest, let's call it as it is, called a degree in BS.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, when I was speaking to people from America, for example, they thought, wow, oh my God, you studied that. They would really put it to a high degree. But in Ireland, people thought, oh, well, this one hasn't got a clue what she's doing. She's doing that degree. Uh, But I know with psychology, being a teacher myself, a lot of secondary school teachers, especially when I lived abroad, a lot of international schools, they chose psychology as their first choice. It was extremely and is extremely popular as a qualification. But just hearing you there, Siobhán, when you're talking about well-being in schools back, even 20 years ago, I mean, what did that actually look like back then? Like, what did people think well-being was?
Well, it was definitely like a lot of it was left to the religion teachers or the Care
Mm.
Bears. That's what the Care
Yeah,
Bears, tree huggers type, anybody and everybody hated, like anybody who wasn't into it
yeah,
hated it. And it was like
yeah,
well-being, well-being. Whereas now it's everything in schools now,
yeah,
it's everywhere and it has to be everywhere.
yeah.
But yeah, no, at the beginning it was, yeah. And it's hard when you didn't have resources, when you didn't have a
Mm,
syllabus, when you didn't have books,
yeah,
it was hard. And then, the students didn't have books, so they, coming from pressurized subjects where they had exams and,
yeah,
homework and lots of like real pressure, that, the whole kind of, I suppose, respect for it
yeah,
as a subject wasn't there,
yeah,
and might be still not there to a degree,
yeah, yeah, I
and
hear
a
you.
lot of people wouldn't touch it with a barge pole,
Oh,
like, still, you know.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Because actually, I'm the same as you, Siobhán. I love teaching social personal health education. They threw me in there with that subject, no problem at all. And I love teaching it, but obviously the discipline side of it was quite tough.
Mm,
But it was that challenge where you had to build real relationships. And it's a real difficult thing to do, I think. I'm not sure if it's about to change, but once a week just is not enough to really build a relationship if you're just teaching that class for that subject. And let's hope, I know there's a lot of work being done by
mm,
yourself and other people. I don't know if you know Cormac Noonan of Wolf Academy, and
yes,
he's amazing. Yeah, he
yeah,
does a lot of work
yeah,
there. And yeah, it's definitely an area I'm interested in myself. So
yeah,
hence why I think we found each other because of that as well.
yeah,
So just going back to your early years, Siobhán, because you did take that really brave step of going to do a master's, and a master's is, quite daunting. And as you said, and this is something I'm learning a lot myself from not just my own journey, but from other people I've been speaking to. When you get to that area of your life, you're looking at your 40s, 50s, women in particular, it is true. It's like this new lease of life, this new, almost this shedding of skin, isn't it?
mm,
And really becoming who you're meant to be. So it gives you maybe that bravery that's needed for what you really want to do. So fair play to you going back and doing the psychology. Like, that's amazing. So you came back to Ireland with that. Well, you were back and
yeah.
forth doing the masters. When you were trying to implement this and do your workshops, what were any of the challenges that you were met other than in the classroom? Were there other sort of challenges you found in terms of trying to make this be a thing in Ireland at that
Uh,
time?
well, I suppose it's like there's so much in what you said there. But I wasn't as brave as you're making me out to be to do the masters. I actually went in completely blind, completely naive,
Mm.
really not knowing how hard it was going to be, thinking, sure, I
Mm.
know all this. And,
Yeah.
I was so naive, and probably I'm glad I was, because
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had, how much I didn't know,
Yeah.
and how difficult it would be, especially with, like, my computer skills were like eBay shopping. And, you know, I remember during the first day, somebody said something about copy and paste. I was like, what's copy and paste? And they were like, oh my God, how do you not know what copy and paste is? Like,
Yeah.
so it was a huge learning curve in that way,
Mm.
as well as everything else. So I'm not claiming the brave for that, but brave, yeah, I was brave after. I was brave after, insofar as bringing it out, because
Mm.
I honestly believe that my mission was bigger, or the purpose or whatever,
Mm.
that sense of meaning really drove me to
Mm.
feeling like that it was like an onus. I nearly had to pay this back. I had to bring it forward.
Yeah.
A sense of duty, maybe,
Mm.
And so I was really, I think, lucky, insofar as lucky as or unlucky, or the way it was I was graduating. Our last two lectures weren't in person in England because of COVID. So I was coming out,
Mm.
and I was setting up Sona in that time. I had just set it up kind of in the time before COVID hit. So therefore, what was needed then was the online wellbeing workshops. So that's
Mm.
exactly how I started. And it was only came up on my Facebook memories there. It was 6 years ago, around about this time, 6 years ago, when I did my very first. And I had said to myself, I'm in my own room, I
Yeah.
have the chair behind me. I had talked myself into, like, I can do this, and that was the first one. And then it was kind of NTDC, social services. They were looking for people to deliver, well-being, and because there
Mm.
was such a need, and the areas of people that were really suffering were elderly people and teenagers.
Mm.
So the social services had money to promote and to run courses, especially for the elderly. And
Yeah.
so that's how it started. That's how Sona started. And, like, I don't really advertise. I don't do too
Yeah.
much promotion. I tried all that and just got me, I'm so frustrated.
Mm.
So it's just by word of mouth. And, every time I deliver something, a workshop or a course, I get some more work out of it. So I've just been really lucky like that, and it's taken off. And every time I do something, I just go, if only one person takes something
Yeah.
from this, or, I would hope that everybody in the room would take something from it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I
That's a
I
really
actually get so much every time, because I
mm.
need the reminders, and we live in the
Mm.
whole messy, you say messy middle, the messy world, you know,
Yeah.
of and we're
Absolutely.
constantly changing as well,
Mm.
I love
Yeah,
that
you're
Robin
right.
Garment. I only used it the other day, and talked about that messy middle. We can be
Mm.
motivated with any change from the start.
Yeah.
That messy middle, which is a lot of the time for all of us.
Yeah, and that is really what I'm noticing is the challenge of to keep going, especially when it's not easy.
Yeah.
So just moving on there, talking about, one of your specialties is all about, which I have a huge belief in, self-awareness. I think self-awareness is really the key to change. I think if you don't know what's going on, or you don't know yourself, first of all, how are you supposed to change anything in your life, whether it's a relationship or your situation that you're in? So in terms of self-awareness, why would you say self-awareness is important, and why is that a factor in your work?
We don't know what we don't know. And
Mm.
that's why I think coaching is brilliant. I think if you
Yeah.
can get a coach who can bypass the stories we tell
Yeah.
ourselves, or the version of ourselves we like to believe we are,
Mm.
or, all of that, and really kind of dig in and challenge us, that's
Yeah.
really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why I love coaching, but it's also why I get my own coaching. And I'm
Mhm.
lucky I have a few different people I work with, to do co-coaching,
Yeah.
because I think it's so important.
Yeah.
But back to your question of the awareness,
Mhm.
as Brené Brown said, it's not a luxury. Self awareness is not a luxury. Period, or full stop.
Mhm.
It's just the basis of everything, isn't it? It's so
Mhm.
important. But then what I found and what I'm realizing in the last couple of years is that self-awareness is actually really hard.
Mm.
And therefore we need what I call the balm of self-compassion. Because when
Yeah.
we become aware, it's so horrible, So you
Oh, yeah.
need the balm of self-compassion to become self-acceptant,
I like
you
that.
know.
That makes a lot of sense, Siobhán. And if we're talking about self-awareness, what would be the signs you would see as somebody who is self-aware? What would you look out
Good
for? What
question.
would you, we even see it in ourselves, maybe.
Good question. Yeah. I don't know if I'd see signs. I suppose everybody is self-aware to some degree. What kind of what turns me off is when somebody's self-delusional, and they're telling
Mm,
them that and they actually believe their own version. And you're just like, whoa. And that's something I have to learn to stop picking at people when they're doing that, because most people don't
yeah.
want to. It's okay if they're coming to me for a coaching
Yeah.
session. But I've found myself where I've recently been doing it to people that it's not my right to do it,
I
and
know.
I think I'm being helpful.
I
I
know.
think I'm being helpful for them, but it's not my
Yeah.
right to do it if they're not turning up for a coaching session
Yeah. Yeah.
to do that. So I have to, that's, my level of self-awareness, my
Yeah,
challenge is
exactly. Yeah.
zip it
Mm.
or, maybe to kind of hint, but not to go in with the
Yeah.
axe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what I found, Siobhán, was I actually had a client the other day and they came to me about it was very clear the relationship they were in was quite unhealthy. But you can't say that to somebody necessarily. You can hint that maybe there's aspects that aren't healthy, but essentially this person has to come to the realization
Mm,
themselves and make their own decision
mhm.
about whether or not this is right for them. And that's where the self-awareness comes in, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I often find people who are willing, one of my key factors I often see, especially in the education system, people are willing to hear feedback, whether it's good or bad. Like when I say bad, critical thinking, looking at, oh, this is something you did, you could have done this a different way.
Yeah.
Some people are really bad at hearing that. Do you find that?
I am kind of, I,
Yeah.
some things, what I'm doing when I'm delivering
Mm,
something like that. First of all, it's always easier if you ask questions and
mm,
they come up with the knowledge by
yeah.
answering the questions. But or if I'm really challenging somebody, and I won't stay working with anybody I can't challenge, because I just
Yeah.
don't. I think that's part of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I will try and wrap it in humor, or at that stage,
Mm,
hopefully have a good rapport with the person,
mhm,
so that I can kind of
mm,
say, "Is this like when you did such and such?" And
yeah.
I think that really helps. But I know myself, I hate it when somebody says
Yeah.
something that is scratching the surface, that's really real and raw, and have no problem then if in my coaching sessions somebody rejects it, and I just I just say, you're probably not going to want to hear this, and maybe it might take you 3 days to accept some version of it, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but maybe, or this is what I've noticed, or I just kind of make the observation and leave it there with them.
Thank you for that, Siobhán. So as you were explaining their self-awareness, it's extremely important. And I'm just wondering, we're talking about, the inner voice that we have, and then there's this critical one that we have. And one of the areas that you explore a lot, which I think all of us can benefit from learning about more, is the inner critic. Would you mind explaining to us, first of all, what that actually is? And also, is there any way to silence this thing? Please tell me.
Magic wand. Yeah, no. I suppose I have to go back to, that awareness. I hadn't a clue how much of a inner critical voice I had. Sometimes I kind of nearly wish I could go back to that ignorance of not knowing it sometimes, because it is hard, when you know it. So yeah, so through all of the work and the modules that I was doing, I became very aware. It was really, I did a module on emotions. I love learning emotional literacy. I love
Mhm.
teaching. I love helping people with emotions, because I just think it's so powerful and so transformative when we understand that whole
Mm,
idea of, I suppose cognitive behavior therapy would be, that's a thought, that's an emotion, that's an action, or the behavior,
exactly.
and how they're all linked, and understanding that.
Mm,
Um, and Yeah, so part of the module was, or part of my work that I chose to do for my assessment was I tracked my emotions every night for 8 weeks. And it was on a free app, Barbara Fredrickson, who's amazing with emotions. It was on her website, and it was a free app, and I did it every night for, I think it was 8 weeks. That's how usually to take on an intervention. It's 6 to 8 weeks. So clearly from this it was screaming out that I was experiencing a lot of guilt and shame. And I was like, I really didn't realize I was struggling so much with guilt and shame. And it was very interesting for me because I was in England doing this, and you're very aware of that whole, when the Irish go abroad, we kind of see what our Irishness is about and how that affects us. So that was interesting. Like, my fellow pupils were saying, well, you're just Irish Catholic. And I was like, no, I think it's a little bit more than just being an Irish Catholic. So even all of that was very interesting, and picking it apart and having the luxury of time and space to reflect on that, and to actually open it up and think about it and read all the literature and the research about it. So it became very clear I had a big problem with my inner critic. So then that's what I decided to study for my dissertation. I decided to create a course that at the time I was basing it at 14-year-olds, that second year in school, where I thought at the time that's where they really seemed to be struggling with that whole self-doubt and question who they were and whatever. Now, I think now that starts earlier. I think it starts around 10 now. But at that time, that's what I was perceiving was the age. So I designed a 8-week course for helping students or people to tackle their inner critic. And it's about reducing self-doubt and tackling the inner critic. Because as you said, I don't think we ever get, I realized through the research and through doing the work on myself, I still struggle from my inner critic. And I've researched it inside out. I know exactly what to do. I know how to help other people. I know how to help myself. But I know it's always going to be, she raises her head every now and again. And I've done, and she takes over every now and again. And I've done I've done all the work, done all the research. And I just know that that's the acceptance part again, that it's learning to deal with it and to tackle it rather than to get rid of it, because I think, yes, there's that course. I do that course with adults now and with young people, right down, to much younger. And it's funny, halfway through, the younger people will be like, oh, yeah, I just don't listen to her anymore. I just don't listen to my inner critic anymore. But as adults, it's kind of like, sign me up. That's really helps, but sign me up when you're doing it again. Because we've built up layers and layers and layers
conditioned
of self-doubt. And we've gathered all the mistakes we've made, and they're all ready for the inner critic to fire at us every time the self-doubt rises up.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking back to that experience, Siobhán, because I can absolutely understand where you're coming from. I've been in situations where I was doing really vulnerable work and learning about myself, and I was surrounded by non-Irish, and under really having that light bulb moment that it's not just our Irishness, it's so complex. It's something I've learned. It's going back like generations, and it's all embedded almost. I'm sure you've heard of epigenetics. So it's in our DNA almost, and we can't diminish that to a certain degree. We can recognize it. But I think when you were talking there about the inner critic and where it comes from, I mean, environment, I'm sure it's a huge part, isn't it? So the environment that you're living in, so who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah. And I think even if you are, surrounded by whatever, then it's like, well, what do I need to counteract that? Because I think, nobody lives in the ideal situation, wherever, and I think it's about kind of, to counteract that, I need to withdraw. I need to mind myself. I need to, whatever it is that works, learning, connecting with other positive people, doing your kind of escape to Dubai
Yeah.
to bring yourself back to that,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and
Yeah.
again, that's self-awareness, isn't it, Emma? It's that
Yeah,
knowing that,
definitely,
I
definitely. Yeah.
need to replug into whatever it
Yeah.
is out there that
Yeah.
gives me, the
Yeah.
recharging or,
Absolutely. And I think, Siobhán, I'm sure you probably see this yourself. I see a lot of people are not very good with their boundaries. So they will allow certain, as they call, leaky energy into their life.
yeah,
And they'll almost feel like that shame and guilt. Oh, well, sure, I have to keep this friend around, or I have to keep this
yeah,
family member around. When actually it's doing is making you feel worse.
yeah,
So yeah, knowing what your boundaries are, what you want,
yeah,
what you need to do to protect yourself, because as we both know, working in education, it's very emotionally draining. So there are elements where we do need that downtime to just not really
yeah,
talk or to be around anyone. So if anybody's coming into that, it's quite tricky, isn't it?
yeah. And I think
Yeah.
we're lucky with the Irish education system that there's
Mm,
always a break coming up. There's always a week
mm,
off or, for that reset and,
yeah,
just even to say, am I okay? Or what do I
yeah,
need to do to mind myself and mind
yeah.
others?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've come across this, Siobhán, but I also noticed a lot of people, especially in the Irish context, they think well-being is a luxury, not a necessity. I've come
Mm,
across that quite a lot compared to other nationalities. I don't know if
right.
that's something only I'm experiencing, but it's almost like if they do pay for a good coach or they do go to a breathwork class or to meditation, they think, oh, but sure, that's only if I have the luxury of all this extra time, but they don't realize doing that will actually help their day-to-day life get better, but they don't maybe see that straight away. Do you notice that?
Yeah, and
Mm.
so many people who know, who know the talk, and it's out
Mm,
here, and then are not really being well in themselves or doing
mm,
what they need to do to mind themselves so that they're centered, and but
yeah.
it's really hard. It's very hard because it's
Mm,
not what's said. It's not what the world we live in. It's people think, as you said, a luxury. It's a luxury, and people think self care, they think of, maybe going for a massage or, having a facial or,
mm,
that the things that cost money and, oh, I can't afford it or I can't afford it time
mm,
wise or, and that just going for the walk. Like I just went down, to the garden this morning to get collect something. And I was like, look at the trees, the light that's coming through the
mm,
trees and the way it's
yeah.
on the footpath and the
Mm,
sound of the birds and that smell of,
mm,
after the rain and, all of that. And that's that mindful moment. But
mm,
I know maybe 2 weeks ago I wasn't in the head place. I'd have gone down,
yeah.
got to come up and rush or shush
Yeah.
and not being
Yeah.
able to, to appreciate and to experience
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
awe and, the loveliness of that.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's a really big thing for me with awareness is that
Mm,
knowing those signs now, those
mm,
signs that I see, oftentimes if I'm saying, oh my God, that's a beautiful shed, or some
mm,
weed or something and being able to
yeah.
appreciate it, that I'm like, yes, I'm on track now.
Mm,
Whereas I could have driven that road
yeah.
5 days in a row and not noticed it, you
Yeah.
know, and then when I'm not in a good space, what does that look like? And
Mm,
that's the real awareness, I think,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could be like just getting narky with somebody or,
Mm,
feeling like, ugh, having
yeah.
those thoughts. And they're kind of like, okay, I need to reset.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I think
think that's real mindfulness, isn't it? That
oh,
kind of,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think as a woman, Siobhán, I'm sure you'll understand this. My goodness, there's like a difference between 1 week to the next when it comes to your cycle and then whatever period of life you're
One
in.
hour to the
Wow,
next, one
it's just
10 minutes
something.
to the next.
And interestingly enough, I had a lovely guest, Michelle, before Christmas when I first started my podcast. She wrote a book for men about the menopause called Menopause Wingman.
And she
So,
was
yeah.
trying to share with men, because I think a lot of men don't fully understand the moods that women are going through, the hormones, how it affects us. So it's not only the environmental, but it's a biological effect on our inner critic as well. I find my inner critic is
Oh,
louder
yeah.
that week before my period. It's
Yeah.
like, don't even come near me. I ring my sister. We tend to be in sync, and we're like, yeah, yeah. Okay, both of us are like crying at the drop of a hat,
Lovely.
like everything.
Lovely. Isn't it great to have somebody that you can share that with and that, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But
normalizing it.
it's hard, isn't it? Because you do find yourself beating yourself up about those things. But as you said, I love that. You just being aware that, okay, right now I'm not in quite that mood.
Yeah. And
So yeah.
therefore, I shouldn't take this phone call. And that's boundaries, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
shouldn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
pitch for this job, or I shouldn't,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
have that
Because
difficult
that's
conversation with somebody, whatever it
Oh,
is.
absolutely. Because that's why, Siobhán, they're talking about that a lot more now. We're cycle syncing. So, like, if we think about the
Yeah.
work day, the work week, it's all to do with the male, the
Yeah.
men, because it's patriarchal. If we were to do things in cycle with women, the work week, the work month would be very, very different. It'd be much more in flow with our
Yeah.
energy. Would be great if we could do that, wouldn't it? So, we talked a lot about the self-awareness, the inner critic, and you mentioned earlier about self-compassion. And
Okay.
again, it is a struggle for us all to come to terms with that. If you were going to give some things that you've seen within your workshops and from meeting other people and even coaching people yourself, what do you think is the most challenging thing that people struggle with? I mean, is it self-compassion, and where do you think that might come from? I know we're overlapping to a certain degree with the inner critic, but as you said, I loved your metaphor of needing that layer of self-compassion when we
Yeah.
have that inner critic.
So I suppose a few things there now. Number one,
Mm,
I think we all fall into potholes, right? So I would,
mm,
in my workshops and in my one-to-one work, is
mm,
I would say I think everybody falls into at least three potholes: perfectionism,
mm,
catastrophizing, whatever it is. And the sooner we realize, just without kind of judgment, just observe and say, that's my pothole, right?
yeah,
Then I think the person owns it instead of it owning them, right?
love that.
So everybody that comes in to me and, I say, in the beginning I thought it was like so many people had that Disney expectations, everything to work out, everything to be fabulous. Even you with the,
Yeah.
the patriarchal, if we had this, if we had that, you know, like we don't,
No, we just
this
have
is
to
the world
accept
we
how it
live
is.
in,
Yeah.
and, start where you're at and let's, deal
Mm,
with the situation as it is,
mm,
So that would be kind of Disney expectations would have been one of the real potholes I felt originally
mm,
loads of people fell into. And then I realized that was only one of a list of maybe 20. I'm compiling a list on my phone
mm.
to one day write something on
I
the
love
different
that
potholes.
idea, though. Wow,
Yeah.
potholes.
But, so even the lack of boundaries, that could be, one, the
Mm,
perfectionism, the, self-doubt, whatever it is, So I think there's no big deal. Just own whichever the potholes that you fall into,
mm,
right?
mm,
So that's transformative, number one.
mm,
Then the other side of what you were asking there was that when I was first researching the inner critic and that whole area of self-doubt, it kept coming back to that we had to be self-compassionate. I was like,
mm.
oh, no way. I was terrified of becoming self-compassionate because I thought if I became more self-compassionate to myself, I wouldn't get out of bed. I'd be there, chocolate and wine and, absolutely. I was terrified of it. And there was a lovely girl who was into self compassion. And I was like, every time she was talking about it. And then through the research and through it all, I had to realize actually, why am I fighting this so much?
Yeah.
What's in this? Why am I rejecting? And we
Mm,
reject so much often what we need to hear,
yeah.
And once I picked that apart and realized that it was a fear, um, and then looked into it, and Christian Neff is amazing. There's amazing people on Tower Brock,
Mm,
but Christian Neff is just, I loved her from the first minute I discovered her
mm,
research and her work on mindful self compassion. And she's very kind of, it is hard. It's
yeah.
hard, and that's exactly why we need to learn to be
Yeah.
kind to ourselves because it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is the kindest people I know find it so hard to be kind to themselves, like really
Yeah.
kind to themselves
Mm.
and really self-accepting, you know,
Yeah. You're
and
right.
that you're not going to be perfect, and that's
Yeah.
okay, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that phrase, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And the Buddhists would say all suffering is
Mm.
non-acceptance,
Yes.
you know. So
Yeah.
that whole thing of, you know, wishing you were here, there, or they or anywhere
Mm.
else, or, you know, wishing things were different. I just, you know, I just see everything now as in valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that's getting into that second phase of life, as you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier on.
Yeah.
Brought up so much that I'd love to
Oh my
expand on.
goodness. Yeah.
But that
There's a
whole thing
workshop
of,
with this.
I think when we get into that second chapter, you know, that second
Yeah.
act, they call it, you
Mm.
know, you become so aware of
Yeah.
time is ticking, my
Yeah.
energy, my mind,
Yeah.
everything is dwindling, you know, and I need to be more careful of the time, of how I choose to spend my time and energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier as well about the reframing of your situation. And I love that idea, as you said, in Buddhism, accepting, where you're at and suffering. I mean, No Mud, No Loaf is one of my favorite books, and it's all about our suffering is our growth. So, not
Yeah.
to necessarily see it as a negative thing, but I heard a really interesting clip this morning. You probably know Joe Dispenza. He's
Oh,
all
yeah.
about
It's brilliant. Yeah.
neuroscience, and it was a really great way to look at it. I needed to hear it actually today. It was all about abundance, and we see abundance as, to be honest with you, most people see it as, oh, that person has a lot of money or that person has this and that. But there's abundance of time, there's abundance of freedom, there's abundance of, relationships. It's whatever way you look at things. So again, it's our perception of something that makes it seem that way. So when it comes to self-compassion, I even was thinking of this myself because I'm trying to do similar work to yourself, Siobhán, and I was thinking almost of, if we were to look at even the last week of our lives and write down all the things we have done rather than all the things we haven't done, because it's so easy, is, oh, I didn't get this done or this and this, but then to actually sit back and even do it like a timeline of our
Yeah.
life and
Yeah.
look at all the things we've done in our lives that was
Yeah.
positive. My goodness, we'd have a list, as long as our
Yeah.
arm. But how many of us actually do that? We look at all the things we didn't do. And that's not self-compassion at all, is it?
Yeah.
And
I think I've gone the opposite now.
yeah, yeah,
My family would say I've gone the opposite anyway. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
But
one of the parts in my course. It's that, you know,
mm,
it's that the negativity bias will have you thinking about what you didn't do, where you went wrong. And the inner
yeah,
critic is firing that stuff at you all the time.
yeah,
So the whole idea is to counteract that by, you know, that the idea of the
yeah.
to-da list instead of the
Yes,
to-do
of
list.
course.
You know, what
Yeah,
I've
I love
done or
that.
claiming the wins. And, you know,
Mm,
so even when I'm doing this with young people, I tell them, get out their phone and write a win list, you
mm,
know, and just things that, you know, even if it's I went to bed early or,
mm,
you know, I got my homework done, or for
yeah,
us, it could be, you know,
yeah,
got to the end of the washing, magic
yeah,
washing pot.
yeah,
I think mine's always like a magic porridge pot. It's always full. Like, so
yeah,
to claim the wins, basically,
mm,
and that completely then shifts your whole mindset. Yeah,
yeah,
Joe
yeah.
Dispenza is brilliant. He's so good.
Oh
His
my God.
stuff is heavy. I find
Yeah,
I have to kind of do a bit of it. I listen to all
yeah,
his books on
yeah,
Audible. And then I have to leave it for a while and then listen to the bit that I've listened to again and again, to
yeah,
get it in. But he's absolutely brilliant. And that it
yeah.
is. It is
One day
so
I'll
much
go to one of his
perception.
workshops. He costs a fortune though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure, all of the all of the
Yeah,
greats are like that.
I know.
And yeah, it's like we are saying earlier on, you know, about I don't mind doing anything or, you know, committing the time or energy or
Yeah,
money or whatever if I'm really going to learn something. And if
yeah,
I'm going to benefit and change so that I
yeah,
can help other people benefit and change. But there's
absolutely.
so much out there that isn't. And it's just, you
Yeah,
know,
you're right. You're right. There is actually, isn't there?
yeah,
But you do add a lot of value, Siobhán, because when I was looking at your site, all of the workshops you do, I mean, one of them that really stood out to me, one of your programs was rewriting your self story. I love that. So that, I guess that will link into a little bit of what we were just talking about. Would you mind explaining about that program? Because it sounds really fascinating.
Yeah. So that was my post today, actually. I don't know
Oh,
if you saw my
lovely.
post
Yes.
today on
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland. I love it. She says, there's no point going back to yesterday. I was a different
Yeah.
person then. I just love
Absolutely.
that.
You're right.
And I just think we constantly need to rewrite the self story. So I don't know if you've discovered, is it The Stories We Live By? Was it Dan
Yes.
McAdams wrote it? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was our last module in the masters, that whole idea of story. And
Mhm.
we understand everything by the stories we tell ourselves. And that's
Yeah.
where often the problems happen, because our
Absolutely.
version of events can be so different to somebody else's version of events or the
Mhm.
reality of the situation. I think it's so good, that whole idea that people need to re-story or
Yeah.
re-edit their self-story, because we're constantly changing and we don't give ourselves credit for that. And when I'm explaining it in workshops, I say, if you're asked what's your favorite color, you
Yeah.
might go back to as you a child, you're always asked these kind of, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color?
Mhm.
And I will automatically think pink, which was, when I was a
Yeah.
kid, it was my favorite color. Like everybody else, we were
Yeah.
told it was pink, right? So I will nearly always revert to that
Yeah.
until I become, no, actually, it's metallics, it's
Mm.
sparkles, it's, gold, silver,
Mhm.
whatever. Now that's my favorite color. But it's
Yeah.
funny, if you ask me the question, the pink will come out
Yeah.
first, foremost, before I have to update it.
Mm.
And that's my example of how, if we don't take stock, sit back, reflect, which we don't because we're all too busy, that we might be making our choices based on an old version of ourselves. And then that's very problematic, because then you're repeating. You're repeating the problems, repeating into the situation. And it's like that, isn't it? We just need to be stepping back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've done that work with people. And what's really kind of just even standing out to me now is people who got the diagnosis of autism or ADHD, or,
Mm.
and they really need to take stock then, and to bring up all of the times they're in class when somebody said something, or the time a friend said something, and they need to restory it.
Mm.
Even myself, I gave up alcohol 2 years ago. And I
Mm.
found that first year I was kind of having to take stock and to remember things and to say, cringe,
Mm.
this happened or that happened. And I had to actually process everything. Or if somebody's
Mm.
gone through a life changing, or got a life changing decision, a
Mm.
diagnosis of cancer, or you know, whatever has changed their lives, or somebody in their vicinity lives. If somebody
Yeah.
has lost somebody in their lives, or, even children, if there's been a divorce, or, whatever thing has happened, that they need to now say, who am I
Yeah.
versus who was I?
Mm.
And that's okay. You know, I think we all need to do that at
Yeah.
various stages. And I think we all need to do it regularly anyway. And I
Yeah.
think one of the most important things I do is I run these regular with the seasons workshops of kind of
Yes.
giving somebody where are you at now? What are your
Mm.
values now? What are,
Yeah.
what's happened for you? And that whole
Yeah.
thing again, that resilience, you have
Yeah.
become resilient
Mm.
because of the crap you've gone through.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
strong, and that no mud, no lotus. Strong strength does not come from everything in life going your way.
Easy. Exactly. So, just in terms of when you're talking about rewriting your story, Siobhán, interestingly enough, I was doing a breathwork experience last week, hosting one, and one of the people that came at the very end of the experience, they actually were quite emotional, which is quite common because it
Mm.
opens you up to your body and your energy, and it lets you fully release, which I think is a powerful thing. It's not just talk therapy can be amazing, but going into that body and relaxing. But they were talking about how they realized after, because my particular experience was all about having compassion for yourself. And this person was quite emotional because they realized how they lacked compassion for themselves and how unkind they were to themselves. But they were starting after that to rewrite their story, which is, I think, as you said, so essential. And I often come back to I forget who it was that said it, but someone pointed this out before. It's probably some famous psychologist, but in terms of looking back at your past, you can't judge yourself for making the decisions that you made back then, because you did what you did with the information that you had at the
Yeah.
time, and to keep beating yourself up about it is ridiculous. The most important thing is moving forward to not make those same mistakes again, or if it's seen as a mistake. I think everything is a lesson,
Yeah.
really, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. But
Yeah.
it's interesting how we do rewrite our story if we look at, as you said, who we are right now rather than who we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah. When you know better, you do better. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Well, we
Brené
hope
Brown would
so.
be brilliant on that. Yeah,
We
Brené Brown
hope
would be
so.
brilliant on that.
Yeah, yeah.
What I'd say is as well is that when I'm working with people, I'd say, that's like, go back to the you, as
Mm,
if it's not you kind of thing, go
yeah.
back to younger Emma, go back to younger
Mm,
Siobhán.
mm,
What would you say to her,
yeah.
And immediately people go, I'd give her a hug, or,
I know.
and if people are really struggling with their self-esteem, they mightn't be able to
Mm,
do that. When I'm doing this with teenagers, sometimes I
yeah.
say, if that's not kind of coming through, then I would say, you
Yeah.
know, what would you say if it was your niece, or,
Yeah.
name somebody that they might have told me that they love,
Mm,
or even if it's an animal. I said, what would you, if they were feeling like that, what would you feel? What would you do?
yeah.
Or what would you
Yeah.
say to them?
Yeah.
And that's really learning self-compassion, when,
Absolutely.
when you can be loving to other people and not to
Mm,
yourself, it's then to bring that round to being to yourself. But I love that, that whole idea of the somatics, the body holds the
mm,
score,
yeah.
and, what you're doing in breath work. I think that'd be amazing. And I definitely want to sign up to one of your classes, because I think it'd be fabulous. But I think it's challenging and it's hard. I know
Yeah.
a retreat I went to one time, I was bawling my way through
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And, I was like, I'm fine. I knew it was good and I was releasing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was like, because again, we don't stop. We don't sit with ourselves enough.
No, no. And unfortunately, a lot of people see crying as a negative thing, but they don't
Oh, yeah.
understand it's the body's way of releasing. So whether it's crying, some people get like stiff joints and have to move. I mean, when I did a breathwork class last year, I remember there's one particular person who didn't know anything about, which a lot of people in fairness don't know much about. What is this breathwork? I mean,
Yeah.
we all breathe. It really is just guiding you into your breath, and it's called breath work for a reason, because
Yeah.
you're working and you're concentrating on the breath and you're trying to shut off the monkey mind. But this lady came along, and she, at the end of the experience, she had gotten quite emotional, and she goes, I'm not coming back again. Like, it scared her. She didn't want to have
Yeah.
to see that. So I can see that it can be a challenge at times for people to even listen to that, or to have self-compassion. But it is all about that self-awareness, isn't it? Being able to move forward in our lives. And
Yeah.
one question just came to me there, Siobhán, before I move on to the end. I'm wondering about male and female, right? In terms of what you see, especially with adults, because I know teenagers are a whole different thing. Do you think that it's a myth that women are more self-aware, or are you starting to see a change in the men, or what's the ratio of people in terms of doing workshops, or are there any men?
Yeah. I often make a joke about that, the whole, yeah. So, yeah. And with everything, that there might be, the 15% men, really,
Yeah.
right? But I know from the guys that did my course, oh my God, they were just, I learned so
Mhm.
much from
Yeah.
them. And I think it's like the yin and yang. We need the
Yeah.
yin and yang, because their perception can be so brilliant and balanced.
Mhm.
When I'm getting too emotional, somebody give me that balance, or challenge my emotions, or
Yeah.
be that kind of no nonsense, like forget that
Mm.
bit,
Yeah.
where it's kind of, I don't know, I appreciate
Mm.
the yin and the yang part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is a lot of women that come, it is a lot of women
Mm.
that, but it is different with teenagers, and
Yeah.
teenage boys are becoming so much more open
Yeah.
to it, I think. I think
Mm.
very dangerously, as in sometimes their influences can be very negative, or
Mm,
that, that machoism. And if they are kind of open to having deep conversations, sometimes that's the only deep conversation that they have access to,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
very, you know,
yeah,
very challenging and dangerous and problematic down the line.
you don't know.
But yeah, so at the end of, I gave a talk, whatever, 2 days ago, and the end of the talk, some woman comes up to me and she says, "Do you work with men?"
Yeah,
And I often get this, I want to send my husband to you.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, "I work with them, but sometimes they don't work with me." And that's okay, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And I would love myself, Siobhán, to do a lot of work with men and women as a connective group, equal parts, because I've seen a lot of growth in that myself. Like I've done a lot of training courses where there was real open and honest sharing between men and women. And I learned so much. And even through being a teacher with teenagers, actually, boys are very naive. They're not. I used to. I think a lot of people have this misconception that boys are a certain way, but they're the sweetest little things when they're in the right environment. And when I was often teaching SPHE, it was really lovely to see that they are kind and compassionate. Unfortunately, those boys don't always get a voice. And yeah, and then we remember when you grow up to an adult, a lot of people are still their
Yeah.
little boys and little girls. In fact, we all are, unless we do our real work on ourselves. There's a little boy and a little girl inside all of
Yeah.
us. So yeah, I love that. But yeah, definitely working with men, I think is a big thing, especially Irish men. They need a bit of help, I think.
Yeah. But a lot of them wouldn't be open for it. It's like that woman at the end of the course that you were talking about.
Mm,
She didn't want to come back because it was, and I think even people that I work with that are brilliant and do fantastic work, and they
mm,
get to the end of that chapter and that's it. That's enough for them.
yeah,
And like, I think the more I'm doing this work, the more I'm like, okay, go away now,
yeah,
and come back to me when you want to do another layer and you
yeah,
want to dig a bit deeper, because it is work. As you said, it's work, it's hard work,
yeah,
and I'm saying to people, get your shovel,
yeah,
because there's something in
yeah,
there. We're going to keep digging until we find,
yeah,
the different
yeah.
spots. And
Yeah,
that's
and it
what it
isn't
is.
easy. Most people don't want to look at themselves because they're
No.
afraid of what they're going to see. So I get that. And that's been definitely a challenge for me as well in terms of the coaching. It's often the people who need it the most don't come along. So in terms of looking at your work as a whole and even you as a woman, Siobhán, if you were going to look back at all the stuff that you've learned, what is the one thing you've learned that you feel is the most valuable, not just to your life, but maybe something that had just clicked with you once and it just thought, that really meant something to me. I learned a lot in that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's been so many that I couldn't just
Yeah.
pick one. I'd love to actually write that out and say, could I
Yeah.
pick one? But there's
Mm,
been so many. Like, I think it's been like kind of a chain,
yeah.
and that I'd have to wear the whole chain.
Yeah.
Would I probably self-compassion, just because we were
Mm,
talking about it, might be at the
mm,
fore of my mind.
yeah.
That,
Mm,
in all of the work that I do
mm,
with others and with myself, that's the idea of the balm of self-compassion
yeah.
is needed,
Yeah.
that everything
Absolutely.
else won't work or
Mm,
won't make sense
yeah.
unless it's delivered, even from me to other people, but unless it's delivered with that kindness. And
Yeah.
I would say equally acceptance, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Absolutely.
There's a great phrase I use with people: it is as it is, not as
Mm,
you want it to be. You know,
yeah.
it is as it is, not as I want it to be.
Mm,
And then you can deal with things.
yeah.
And then, as you just said, fear is huge. And James
Mm,
Hollis has done wonderful work on fear.
yeah.
I just think he's brilliant as well on
Yeah.
midlife and a few different areas. Really good.
Yeah.
But that whole thing of, that identifying your fears, and
Mm,
I've done lovely work with people, helping them to get over something that's really encaged, that is
yeah.
like a cage for them, because it's usually to do with fear,
Yeah.
and helping them identify it. It's just fear.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I did talk about that recently as well, about the ego, isn't it? So loud, it tells us not to do something, we've all this judgment. But yeah, because what you said there about self-compassion, just kind of leading me to your final work, and I know that's one of your philosophies when you talk about this online, is about helping us lead a happy life. So I'm presuming self-compassion is a huge component of that. And as you said, accepting where you're at right now is part of being happy. Is there anything else you would recommend for listeners in terms of if they're at a point in their life right now and they're not feeling quite fulfilled and they don't know what to do next? We talked about a lot of amazing things today. We talked about self-acceptance, quietening the inner critic, looking at, where that all comes from. Would there be any other advice that you could give them in terms of to be more fulfilled in life?
Yeah, I suppose the thing about happiness is you're not going to be happy all the time. So when I'm in working with students, I say, who's happy all the time? And they'll all roar back at me, psychopaths. Only psychopaths are happy all of the time. Like, I know loads of people who are positive psychologists who are not. You wouldn't describe as happy, But so I think that's, again, back to that Disney expectation. Stop expecting yourself to be happy all the time. Stop expecting your life to be perfect, to be brilliant, to be all the people around you to be perfect and brilliant. It's about learning, I'm okay. Even though I'm flawed, I can still be fabulous. And once I accept that in myself, I can accept it in other people. That when they're being mean, it's not usually about me, it's about them, or, and I can be, kind and compassionate to them because they're not in a good space or whatever. So I think that's huge, to stop wanting to be happy all the time. And then happy, like, it's what is happy, and that's that whole kind of area. But I think taking time back to do the reflection, to do the work, to think, to analyze how you are. And that's really hard because we're all on our phones too much. I know I spend way too much time on my phone, but I do try to do the work, as in stepping back, or, having these brilliant conversations which make you think differently, and then allowing yourself the space during the day to reflect or to think, what came up for me in that. So I think, another thing that I do is to kind of think, well, what are the common denominators of happy people? Or if you want to be happy, what are the common denominators of happy people? And that's something I would do in a lot of my time, is kind of say, are you carving out time for family and friends? Are you spending, exercise? It's the real, it is the real one that I know don't love my exercise. I hate it, but I know when I'm doing it, I'm able to handle life's curveballs better. So optimism, are you kind of having the optimistic thoughts, as we said earlier on, kind of being boundaried and careful of what you're letting in. And I think that's huge. Like, if you're not following, it's we think that even I'm watching something on Netflix at the moment and it's really good, but I know the negativity and the fears that it's inducing in me are making me feel like a little bit, more anxious, and that I'm watching it late at night, and then that's affecting my sleep. So everything we're consuming and letting in, every conversation we're having, everything we read, everything we follow on Instagram or whatever is affecting us and infecting us.
You're right. I love that. Yeah, it's not just what we eat, it's our diet of what we read and we listen to and all of that. Yeah, absolutely. And just to finish and close up, one other question I had for you, Siobhán. I love the fact that you send you deliver motivational quotes a lot. Which one is your favourite, or one of your favourites?
I love that. No mud, no lotus. I love that one. I think one of my favourites, it is my favourite, because whenever I'm delivering and I say it, it's you may have been given a cactus, but you don't have to stay sitting on it.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's really good. There's somebody I have worked with that loves that, and she always comes to my mind, and her transformation has been mind-blowing. So I always get filled with joy and inspiration from the work she has done.
Not to be living in that victim mentality, because it's life is what you
and
make
we can
of
all
it, really,
go there.
isn't it?
I know I go there, and I hate it when I go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Siobhán, to talk
Thank
to
you
you
so
today.
much.
I've been
loved
so
it,
happy to finally get to chat with you.
Yeah.
If people want to find out more about you or have a look at your workshops and your other offerings, where's the best way to find them?
Sauna Wellbeing, www.saunawellbeing.ie or .com is
Lovely.
my website. It was down, it's only back up again now. And I have a QR code I might send you, which has the links to my Instagram and my LinkedIn and my Facebook, where I post every single day for 7.5 years.
That's dedication, Siobhán. Yeah, it's
and
all
there's
about
been a lot of wobbly days in that.
Yeah, that's exactly it, though. I think that's a good way to sum up our conversation. It's just doing the thing, even actually, especially when you don't feel like doing it. So fair play to you. That's my version of positive for sure. Anyway.
Yeah. And thanks so much. And your work is so important, and you're so beautiful. I keep saying that to you. You know, you're beautiful. This beautiful aura, light from you, and I know you will be helping so many people that need it so much.
Trying my best, Siobhán. Sure, like you said, it's the higher purpose, isn't it? That's what it's all about. Have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for sharing that with me.